I'm Brett Cooper, and this is the Frontline Mobility Edge, where we discuss the latest in mobile device technologies and how they're shaping the frontline landscape of business. Thank you for joining us. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Frontline Mobility Edge. I'm joined by Wes Coleman, who is a warehouse industry principal from Zebra. Wes, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, thanks, Brett. Appreciate you having me on.
And we're going to talk about, I sort of cribbed some of the descriptions you guys, Zebra's used in the past, the orchestrated warehouse or the orchestrated warehouse in 2026. We're going to talk about some of the newer technologies. I want to get Wes's readouts and really understand what he's seeing in his role. And I'll talk about that here in a second. But you've been doing warehouse, logistics, transportation for 20 plus years, been at UPS, FedEx, working with those guys for various roles. But I guess what was your first warehouse job? Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, it was UPS, man. I was back in my teens. I learned very quickly the need to automate processes, even back then. And honestly, 20 years, you're being kind. I appreciate it. But I did 36 years at my most recent company, ran their operational excellence team, and spent a lot of time walking the warehouse and figuring out things.
Where you started out, so UPS, you started out working, putting boxes on trucks, like holiday, or what
Right.
was
Yeah. Yeah. I did. Yeah. I was an unloader, then a loader, and then way back then, this is in the late '80s. Learned very quickly that if you learn the zip codes for all of the U.S., they promoted you to a job called primary sorter, where you didn't have to be in the back of the truck, which was a big deal in Florida because those trucks got pretty hot.
That's hilarious. I didn't realize that until you just said it. But when I was doing work for USPS, Postal Service, I memorized all the zip codes, and it was definitely a useful skill in certain roles. I think my first warehouse job was I was doing, I got picked up to do data entry, and it turns out data entry meant go do cycle counts. So walk around the warehouse and count boxes all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was not glamorous, and it definitely, like you said, made me realize why you want to have a technology to help with a lot of these things. Because yeah, even though people have those jobs, they might not necessarily want them. In your current role, so at Zebra, as a industry expert or industry principal, like describe what you do. I think a lot of people don't really understand that Zebra has some of the capabilities that you and other folks from your team work on.
Yeah. No. No. Thanks for teeing that one up. Yeah, so I do a little bit of this, right? A few podcasts and webinars here and there. I do executive briefings in front of customers at both at our headquarters and at customers' sites as well, where I fill them in on industry trends. There's some of that, but for the most part, what I do is visit customers' warehouses, walk those warehouses, listen to their vision, listen to their challenges, and take some really good notes, ask the right questions at the right times, and parlay that into a report back to the customer as to what their opportunities for improvement are specific to technology and automation.
Well, when you say technology and automation, that's everything from handhelds to fixed cameras to RFID. Like what else is involved? Like robotics, probably somewhere in there too.
Yeah, it's everything. I work for Zebra. We're a mobility company and cover RFID and solution software, machine vision, you name it, right? But I consider myself an advocate for the customer, and I'm there to help them understand how they can improve. Most of the time Zebra plays in that space, but if they want to talk about other technologies that are out there, robotics, auto retrieval systems, things like that, we can certainly have those kind of conversations too. So the goal is to build that partnership with the customer and trust.
Awesome. One of the things I know Zebra puts out, I'm going to call it the vision report. So I think you guys put one out last year, and I'm not sure the actual frequency, but I think they come out every other year. But the warehouse vision report that you guys released had a study that talked about how much it costs to replace a worker in the warehouse. And I think the one thing I always think about is, I've had warehouse jobs, manufacturing jobs in the past, and there are so many things that just go wrong that you need a human there to go fix them, and you need people that have that experience and the training. I think you guys called out that the cost to replace an employee was about $6,000. I think when you and I were talking about this before, I feel like you and I both feel like it's a lot more than that. There's so many things that humans do in the loop. if you had to guess, like what would you think that cost is, the actual cost? Not to counteract the report that your company put out, but what would you guess it's at?
Yes, we do release that the vision study specific to warehousing. We release that every year to 18 months, and since then we've actually done a study with Oxford Economics, and based on their respondents, they came up with a number of $19,000 to replace a worker, specific to warehousing. So yeah, I think that's more accurate in my experience as well.
Yeah, that sounds probably a little closer. Adjusted for the inflation in the last 12 months, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So the first topic I wanted to hop in with you on, Wes, was that the shift from human replacement to human extension. And the way I think about this is that technology is an extension of what those experts and people in the warehouse do, the workers you have, people that are there day by day doing things. And you've spent, I think you just said three plus decades working in warehouses and warehouse facilities. How have you seen the shift in the last 10 years from, the robots are coming to replace us, or full automation across everything, to, using this technology to smartly augment and support our human staff that are driving or the heart and soul of these operations?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I mean, if you want to go all the way back 10 years, you think about, Amazon and Kiva, where they were bringing the shelves to the workers. You think about a couple of years later, where Locus entered the market and kind of produced this solution where, hey, we have a wonderful solution. It's not all that you can't really modify it that much, but it's a wonderful solution. Still a good solution today. I think back then, 8, 10 years ago, the conversation by leaders was very similar to the conversation that's happening today, specific to AI. Like, hey, how do we get out ahead of this? How do we get in the game? And I think that specific to robotics, that conversation has flattened a little bit. I think we've seen that for sure. But it was a hot topic back in the day, and there was a lot of buzz with leadership about how to get in the game, and there was a lot of buzz with workers, worry about, hey, is this going to replace my job? And I think we're going to talk a little bit more deeper about that later. But what I've seen, I visit a lot of customers' warehouses. I've spent a lot of time in facilities, and what I've seen is things start to come full circle, right? So there's been a lot of businesses that have put their toe in the water on really expensive, large projects, automation projects, and I think what they've found, what I'm hearing from them that they found, is the cost of ownership is pretty large. It's huge, and may not have been fully discussed in the sales cycle or understood for that matter, because there's a lot of aspects of that come into play. But I'm seeing businesses that kind of come full circle and understand where they need to put really expensive, long ROI automation in place and where they don't. And we've got MODEX coming up in a few weeks, and there's going to be a lot of 50,000 people walking around trying to answer that question. What do I want to automate? What process do I want to automate? And it's one of the beautiful things about MODEX is there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to automate a process, right? And I think that's the key, right? Understanding what you need to automate. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess the automation versus the augmentation is sort of the line in the sand of, can you spend a lot less and make your human and your employees and your associates a lot more effective without having to spend $3 million for a fixed machine that may be obsolete in 10 years.
Exactly.
Yeah. One of the things, and just thinking about things that are helping employees, I know Zebra does a lot of mobile devices. This is the generation of workers that have grown up with a phone in their hand. So the iPhone came out, what is it, almost 20 years ago now. And everybody who's in their 20s has had one of these through high school, college, et cetera. There was a stat in your vision report around companies that have I guess, poor technology have a higher, 30% higher turnover rate, which I'm guessing their turnover rate is 130 instead of 100%. But, when you think about that worker first technology approach, like how would you advise companies on thinking about putting good technology in the hands of their employees?
Yeah, one of my favorite taglines is, workers have great technology at home. They have great technology in their back pocket, and a lot of them have great technology in their cars now. And ultimately, when they get to work, they expect good technology. It's a key to businesses being able to retain, attract and retain employees is having great technology. To add to that, specific to which technology, because you referenced, consumer grade there, but user acceptance is top of mind for businesses today. I think there was a time when that wasn't as important to businesses. They were, businesses would basically evaluate which devices would give them the best throughput, productivity, accuracy, and that's what they would drive through their workforce. I think we've seen a change with that. I think now worker retention is so important that businesses, customers are now looking to users to try to understand what they're going to be most comfortable with, using in their day-to-day tasks, and that's what businesses are targeting, and it makes good sense.
Yeah, as you said, that made me think about doing cycle counts. So 3,000 scans a day, 7 days a week. If you're using a bad ergonomics or something that is just annoying from a usage standpoint, you're going to have people turn over fast. So yeah, I could see that one. One of the technologies I know that we've seen evolve over the last couple of years is voice technology. And I feel like a lot of the newer voice technology is, I'm going to call it voice at the edge. So I know you guys, Zebra has a lot of devices now that have onboard AI chips, and a lot of manufacturers starting at that too. So you get things like translation, voice recognition. A lot of this can happen on device. Where do you see that technology helping employees in these facilities, and what's the biggest game changers you've seen around I'm going to call it voice 2.0?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a little story here. So 20 years ago, I deployed a voice solution for picking, and it was let's call it state of the art, but it was still like a 90-day ramp to get the employees to competency from a productivity perspective, because they were using this rule-based required responses. It had to be in the NATO phonetic alphabet, Alpha, Bravo. Unless you came out of the military, what 18-year-old knows all those? They have to learn all those, get their responses correct. There was a lot of say again type activity. So now a worker with the current technology, a worker can have a natural conversation with the same device they use for picking orders. It's this is just within the last couple of, really within the last year where we've got this technology available to us. And it's now very important for businesses to consider exactly which technology they purchase because of what AI is going to bring to the art of the possible, if you will. It's no longer hey, which device is the most reasonably priced. It's more about which device is going to give us the horsepower at the edge to do the computations that we need to do at speed. So we're better off, but it puts more on the business to figure out which device that they need to go with.
Perfect. All right. So we're going to pivot here. So the second topic I had for you was around automation. So and I think there's a couple different levels of automation. I sort of view this, but I like your thoughts on it too. But the first is like a conveyor belt scanning things automatically, fixed cameras, things like that. I know a lot of the places I've worked with, things like the auto sorting machines, so big racks that automatically sort things, put things away, take things out, A-frames for picking, pick by light, loading docks that actually have robots. I've seen one of the customers we work with actually has robots that pull stuff off of trucks, which is interesting. And then the autonomous robots, so the Figure AI, the Tesla Optimus, is those types of things that you're starting to see people look at. So there's all this different automation, and there's probably like 20 other things that you see in your day to day. But this goes back to your earlier thoughts around the capital investment. When a CFO sees, go automate this for $20 million, how do you think about, where to go spend money, how to justify, what to automate versus what to just augment or improve with humans? Long question.
Yeah. So,
Sorry.
no, it's good. It's a lot of context. So so I like to think of things. There's process automation. Where you think about something as simple as like a scan tunnel or a person using a mobile computer for cycle counting, like what you mentioned. You've got physical automation. Where you have autonomous or near autonomous machines handling tasks that were manual. Like you mentioned, Fox Robotics out there, they can unload a full trailer and also load it autonomously. So there's a good example of physical automation. From an ROI perspective, the timelines are very different, right? So process automation where you basically can augment an existing process or a worker. The payback starts almost immediately, and that's because that you're not necessarily changing their process, right? You're hopefully taking a process that was pretty refined, and you're adding some automation capability to that worker so that they can do it more efficiently, effectively, accurately, whatever you're chasing there. And typically the process type automation, the ROI is not only faster, but the spend is less too, right? Physical automation, it's a bigger payday, right? You can virtually eliminate quite a few of your pickers or move them to other activities, but you oftentimes are changing the process, and you're changing the processes that feed it and the processes that are downstream as well, which can upset an operation, right? Anytime you change the flow of an operation, it's a challenge. We can have a whole separate podcast on change management, but the cost of physical automation is often very expensive. The ROI, sometimes 7 to 10 years, unless you go with a as a service type of model, and even that's kind of fading a little bit with the advent of AI, obviously. So it's and a lot of times it's a physical piece of equipment in your building, which now you've got to look at, okay, well, how long do I have a lease for? What's it going to cost to move this thing if my business grows? So there's a lot of things that kind of go into play, but I would say the biggest difference is completely changing a process and upsetting your flow and having to deal with that. Which a lot of times it's worth the effort to do that, but there will be effort. I don't know if that kind of answers.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah. Just the thought of moving any large piece of capital equipment in a building when you do like shelf and rack moves, which definitely happens in a lot of these facilities, or if they expand, it's terrifying to me. Something's going to get broken. One of the things I've heard you say in the past, or I've read from some of the other things you've written, is the focus on automating the constraint. Can you talk about, when you say that, what are you thinking about, or how do you go in and consult and advise with people on the automate the constraint type of analysis?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, this is where it gets, I love this part of operational excellence and continuous improvement and best practice, right? Those three things kind of coming together. You need to break out your clipboard and your hard hat and your stopwatch and kind of get in and start figuring things out. And it could be as simple as a person that's working at a pack bench, picking up and setting down items that could be fixed. So a barcode scanner would be a perfect example of that. They pick it up and set it down, and you watch them pack one box, and it's really not that big of a deal. But if you start doing the calculation on how many times that happens in a shift, in a week, in a year, it's a lot, right? And it adds up. Same type of thing with respect to how far you walk. Hopefully, we're going to get to the point where we talk about slotting and the advantages of slotting, the importance of it. But that's another perfect example. I mean, if you're selling lights for Christmas trees and it's October and you still got those lights at the end of the aisle, the wrong end of the aisle, that's a problem, right? So counting the worker steps and making sure that you optimize those is important. Yeah, automate the constraint. I mean, that's it's 101 stuff, but I think a lot of folks don't necessarily see the obvious there.
How do you, so next question I have is, as an operator or a warehouse operator, how do you advise people to figure out what those are? Like the travel time of walking to a different slaughter bin, or your sortation mixes, or, how you, handle different operations, even like physical, like small moves, like you talked about, like a 2-second move, but you do it 1,000 times a day, it becomes really expensive. Like, how do
Yeah.
you help people diagnose that and pick, the priority of where to start and where to end up with those?
The key is having your due diligence done by the right people. You need to have the right parties involved. So if we're talking about warehousing, IT has to be involved, OT has to be involved, right? The functional folks, and I would not discount the advantage of having someone, an actual user involved. And usually those three are a pretty good mix to come to some conclusions. It probably is worthwhile if you don't have an in-house, operational excellence team, bringing in some kind of a subject matter expert to help, especially if you're trying to determine. I think if I see where you're going with this conversation, if you're trying to determine what to automate, what process to automate, then it's worth spending some bucks to make sure you go in the right direction.
So go do a study and find that constraint you were talking about earlier. Find those constraints, identify them, and ask the end user what they don't like. It is a little hard though. Sometimes I've had this situation where I ask an end user and they walk through the process and I see it. And I'm like, you just described a 14-step process that could take 2 steps, and the guy's like, it's fine, because he's gotten used to it. So it is a little bit hard sometimes where people are so far in the weeds they don't realize that it could be better. So I don't know. There are challenges there as well.
In my previous world, one of the things that we had to do, I don't know, 2 or 3 times a year, we would have to change our staging layout on the dock to accommodate changes in customers' routing. Every time we involved the actual truck driver in the conversation, our success rate was 100%. Anytime we felt like we were smarter than the truck driver and tried to kind of engineer it without involving them, there would be a failure point because there would be something that they knew that we didn't. Getting the end users involved is important.
That's true. Yeah. Also, there's always the guy who has the hacks in the warehouse. Go talk to that guy, because there's probably a hack somebody is already doing in those processes. The next thing I had, just thinking about capital expenditures, and I mentioned Figure AI and Tesla, Optimus. There's a bunch of other players in the space right now with the humanoid robots that are between, I'm going to call it $80,000 to $300,000 to buy one of these, which seems very cheap compared to 5 years ago for a lot of these capital, but it's still a lot of capital. Where do you see companies actually start to look at those and evaluate whether they're worth having in the warehouse? I know there's things like dunnage robots and automated fork trucks, things like that, but where do the humanoid robots start to actually come into play in the next 5 to 10 years?
It's an interesting question, especially specific to warehousing, right? I think we're more than 5 years out when it comes to humanoids in the warehouse. Honestly, my honest opinion is, unless you're going up and down steps, I'm not really sure that the bottom half of your robot needs to have legs, right? I think in manufacturing it's probably a bit different, but yeah, I think we're more than 5 years out from that respect, in my opinion.
Where do you think they will start, or we will start to see them when it does start?
It's a tough question, man. I don't know. it's hard for me to wrap my mind around it. When I walk through these warehouses, and there's a lot of warehouses out there that are still running with 20-year-old processes. So to think about them coming around this curve that fast is a real challenge for me to understand. I think it's probably static activities like you mentioned, cycle counting. We're already seeing that with companies like Dextry that are doing it with basically a robotic autonomous robot on wheels. But I think it's going to be it'll probably start there.
You have to reuse that quote. Unless it needs stairs, it doesn't need legs.
Right.
So the next topic area, which is probably, you've hinted at this before, but the AI reality in the warehouse in the next 3 years. So I think AI is to me, it's very amazing what it's done in the last 36 months from an acceleration cycle. I know there's a lot of question marks early on with it doing silly things, but I feel like it's gotten to a point where it's getting really good, especially with some of the agentic pieces and things automating and running on their own. In the warehouse, are there, for the dollar, do you think there are spots where you can put AI in place that's actually going to make a big difference? I had a list of actual areas. I can go through these. I'll maybe go through these of, I don't know if you want to say low, medium, or high usage of AI right now, but for demand forecasting and replenishment, your thoughts? Is AI a good fit for that one?
I think it's good. I think that's a medium probably if we're staying focused on warehousing. Yeah.
And that's mainly like knowing what to order, what's going to come in, and back to the seasonality thing you're talking about before. The next one, dynamic slotting and inventory placement. And just to describe slotting for the folks that don't know, slotting is it moving where things are in the warehouse. Like Wes was saying earlier, if it's getting towards the holiday season, you want to put Christmas lights and decorations, closer where people are picking from. With AI applied to that, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think that's high. I think we're actually already seeing that today. It's interesting you asked that question, and we actually, just to be honest with the audience, we didn't queue this up ahead of time, but Zebra's actually using an AI slotting tool, a digital twin tool in our facility in Kenosha, Wisconsin, to make sure we have the right product in the right place. And I'll just expand on that for a minute. Because everybody wants to know, okay, well, what's the AI piece of it, right? Well, slotting, getting the right item in the right location, that's been around for 20, 25 years, right? Great WMS companies have had figured out. What the AI piece, adds, because slotting, you need to have the attributes of the location and also the item, right? You need to know those two, and obviously the velocity of the item. The AI piece is where you can add to that information when it's coming in the door next and when it's headed out the door today. In other words, what orders do we already have in the system that are queued up? So you add that level of intelligence to the picture, and of course you already know where the worker is. Then you can really move products in real time. Hey, I know Johnny's already in this aisle. He just completed a pick task. Let's have him do a product move because we know, item A can now fit into location X because location X is empty. So it's a real tool and it benefits workers immediately.
And just to context what you said there, when you say digital twins, you guys have taken and effectively built a digital model that is identical to your physical facility, and then the AI is running simulations against that to identify and build the optimal layout, and that's what drives those slots and moves, right?
Not so much the layout, but what you do within the layout that you've defined, right?
Got it. All right, that makes sense. The next one of how useful AI be for is labor planning and task orchestration. So, who do you put where? What are they doing, and what are their tasks? What is their next task?
Yeah, this is another one that I think is high on the list for AI. And again, we we know of a great company out there that actually is using AI in their labor management offering, they figured out a great way to do it. So the functionality that they're utilizing, the AI functionality that they're utilizing is, of course, it's a labor management tool, right? So it's pretty advanced, where users are able to understand. They get push notifications on their devices with regard to how they're doing, right? How they're doing against yesterday, their goal, and their team. And that's good information. But with Tax Tool, they're actually able to get the supervisor that same pushed information, so they can understand when a worker is challenged a little bit from a productivity perspective. And the AI piece is the coaching dialogue that's provided to the supervisor in real time as to how they should speak to the worker. And I say that, I tiptoe around that conversation a little bit, because a lot of times in warehouses, folks that are supervising today were an actual worker a couple of weeks ago. So while they were probably a really good order puller, they may not be the best at actually understanding how to coach people appropriately. So this solves for that in real time. So it's AI functionality that we're seeing in the warehouse today, and it's very valuable.
Interesting. And the next one on the list was computer vision for quality, counts, exceptions, and safety. And safety is an interesting one. It almost seems like a separate category, but using computer vision to watch what's happening and build recommendations around those. But what's your thoughts on where that is in maturity?
Yeah, no, the company. There's companies already out there doing it. We're in conversation with those guys today, where they can take the cameras that you already have in place that you use for security and safety. They can add cameras to that, so that they get a broad enough grid of cameras, and then use AI to understand what activities folks are doing in their warehouse, in the aisles, right down to the location level. So with the camera, you're able to get the X, Y, and Z axis, obviously, and then allowing AI to kind of understand or translate exactly what happened on the camera back to the system of record. So it's a real thing. It's happening today.
So is that a medium right now? You think it's going to move to high, or?
Yeah, it's definitely a low to medium now, but it's escalating.
Next one I had was predictive maintenance for sorters, conveyors, robots, lift equipment, forklifts. Like,
I don't know. That's probably a low, I would think.
a lot of those don't have enough sensors on them right now, right? You need the
Yeah,
sensors and the data to actually feed the AI that data.
right. Yeah, it's fortunately, most of the folks that take care of this type of equipment are pretty proactive anyway. If they're doing it right, there's not a lot of reactivity going on with regard to failures, right?
My favorite recent conversation was with a warehouse manager. I asked him, like, how's labor been with some of the labor shortages? He's like, I'll tell you what, my hardest thing is actually finding people that can fix robots. Which I thought was pretty funny, because the corporate started putting all these robotic sorting machines and everything in. He's just like, we don't have, our maintenance guys just don't know how to, don't have the skill sets to fix them yet. Which I think leads to the next AI question. But AI enabled robots for picking, stowing, palletizing, consolidation, loading, unloading. Thoughts on where that is in the hype cycle?
Yeah, I think it's I think companies are figuring it out. I think we'll see a lot more of that at MODEX this year. But yeah, I think that's medium and escalating. It's happening. 2 years ago, Fox Robotics did not know how to load a truck autonomously, and now they can do it. So it's that's a big piece of it.
Got it. I know, I guess just other question I had in this category. Let me write this down. Over the next 3 years, for companies looking at AI automation, those types of things, the approach, which I think was from one of the docs I saw you'd written, was digitizing the base first, so getting everything into data, automating the bottlenecks, figuring out what the bottlenecks are, and then putting AI on top of it. When you look at companies you're working with, how good are they actually taking those 3 steps or decoupling it into those pieces? And is there anything else they need to do even before they start that journey?
I would say very few companies feel 100% about their data. And that's step one, right? You said it, shoring up that is instrumental and necessary. And ultimately, there's no easy button to solve for this, right? The process improvement is still a step that can't be skipped. You've got to get your processes tight before you attempt to automate them, regardless of what that automation looks like. And I think I would add to that it's critical as companies go on this journey to find the right partner to help navigate this AI journey. That's critical.
Bring in the outside experts, Wes Coleman of the world. Not to name any names, and please don't name any names, but if you see any companies do the jump the gun on AI and start putting AI into things where they didn't do those groundwork or the fundamental steps beforehand.
Yeah, I'm not a namer, but yeah, the business leaders that I've talked to, because it's a conversation. Every time I'm with a leader, a business leader, I ask them what their vision is, what their plans are, the roadmap, and they're all saying the right things. They're doing the right things. They understanding things like doing the due diligence of the governance of AI. Obviously, all businesses are looking at that today, but I think it's important to note that if you want to move as quickly as you need to from an AI perspective, the governance, the shoring up of the data, the determination of the right process where you want to put the AI, it's all got to happen contemporaneously. Companies do not have time to push AI out 5 years. They're going to get passed by.
Do it now. I know we're coming up end of time, so just do a quick summary of the areas we talked about. The first one was the augment your humans. So really think about what you can do to improve the experience of your laborers. Your team is expensive to replace. Try to keep them around. Use tools and technology to augment them and improve their performance, their experience, their safety. The second area we talked about is automation, which I think the key thing there I took away was really thinking about the constraints. Like start with constraint-based thinking and look at the constraints and then automate around that, as opposed to going and putting these $20 million capital intensive projects in. And then the third one was, I think with the AI topics, you give me some good thoughts on a couple of these, but really think about the areas where you need to shore up now in order to be able to leverage AI better. So definitely good practical experience. I was a little sad you didn't tell us to all go out and buy some shiny robots, Wes. But I guess I've got to wait 5 years for that. But we'll revisit that. We'll revisit that one in 2031. So your group is in the, I'm going to call it MT&L. So you work with an MT&L, manufacturing transportation logistics. Where could people find out more about what you and your cohort does at Zebra?
Yeah, so we're already doing business with 80% of the Fortune 250 companies, right? So most of the folks watching this podcast probably already have a great sales leader with Zebra, but I think it's important to let everybody know that the vision study specific to warehousing that we talked about today, it's available at zebra.com. You can run that down. And I'm available, right? I'm out there on LinkedIn. So anybody that wants to chat, do a deeper dive on any of this, reach out.
Awesome. Will you be at MODEX too?
Yes. I'm actually speaking Wednesday in Theater B. I don't know, like 2 or 3 o'clock. So if you can make that, make the trip. And I'll be at the booth most of the rest of the time that week.
Awesome. And Zebra's booth, I wrote down here, was B11902. So definitely swing by, take a look. They always have some cool stuff going on. Wes, thank you very much for hopping on this afternoon. Appreciate it. And look forward to seeing you at MODEX.
Thanks, Brett. See you.
Awesome. All right. See you guys. Thank you for tuning into the Frontline Mobility Edge. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe for more content every month. If you'd like to learn more about BlueFletch, check out the link in the description or visit us at bluefletch.com. See you next time.